Boom, we are recording in progress. All right, hi everybody. This is Women of Solid, the creation of Virginia, thankfully. I will be your host, Marrelle Bailey. As some of you know, I work as a community and communications organizer at Interrupt, and I host Solid World. So I got the privilege from Virginia to also be able to host this amazing event. And I think it holds so much value to our community and to just the world of women overall, because I feel like a lot of us, it's hard sometimes to see other women uplifting other women. So I feel like this is such a great space to be in, very rewarded. So with that, she also gave me the opportunity to kind of kick off this meeting and do a little presentation myself. And so not recently, about a few months ago, I got inspired to write a blog about how we all matter in the community. And I basically turned that into a few slides of a presentation, and we'll do that. And then after that, we're gonna have Juliette speak, and then after that, we'll have Maria speak. And so afterward, we'll have a discussion session, and during that time, we can, if whether everyone feels comfortable, we can probably, I guess, turn off the recording and just have a conversation with each other. Alrighty, so I'm going to share my screen and kickstart this presentation. And I am actually in my downtown. So if you hear honking and stuff, it's because I'm downtown. Alrighty, so let's see if you can see my screen. Oh, oops, I'm pressing the wrong button. Alrighty, and if you all don't mind, are you able to see the screen right here?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so basically the premise of these slides is you matter as you. And so I kind of wanted to break down of like, what's the inspiration behind me doing this? And basically, I feel like in life, we ask ourselves, like, do I matter in this space? Like, do I belong here? Like, whether you're in a meeting, you're with like friends, or you're just like at work by yourself and you're doing something, and it can be really difficult and something that we ask ourselves. And even though it's this deep conversation, it's also like a really easy answer, like, yeah, you do. You totally matter. And so basically that inspired me. I feel like I have a calling and a purpose to uplift people, whether that's in the solid space or it's in the world or it's wherever. It's my calling. And so I just felt like this is a space where I can really dig into that and hone into it. So that's what inspired me to write the blog and to do this presentation. So next is, what does like it mean to even matter? So matter is a cool word, but like, why does that have a purpose in this conversation? And it's to be of importance, which means you are of importance. You are of importance to this community. You are important to Solid and also for the world, because what we're trying to implement with Solid is more than just a cool web standard. It's actually something that gives people control of their data and completely changes the way we view the world. Right now, we think everybody else has all this control over us, but we're getting that control back, which not only empowers the world, but it empowers us as women to be at the forefront of that. And so I kind of wanted to go into like who can help. And so I thought of a few ones that I used actually in my blog, but also just what we need. And it's really cool because earlier today we had the diversity, equity, and inclusion meeting, and literally we ended up talking about how literally majority of these people are needed, whether it's designers or it's copywriters or it's people that have communications and voices, whether that means that you're speaking at events or you're just speaking into the community. And I've seen almost every single one of you have a voice in these spaces, and I think that people want and need to hear you. And also, I put entrepreneurs, and I think every single one of us is an entrepreneur in our own way, because I feel like to me, an entrepreneur is a creator, and we all are creating in this space. And I also just wanted to say that you might not see what you affiliate with up here. And so I just wanted to say everybody in between all of these spaces are able to be here. Whether you feel like, well, I'm just this, you're not just that. You are something that creates value to this community. And so you can reach out to me, whether it's using email, Getter, or LinkedIn. But the one last thing I wanted to say is please do not hesitate to reach out. If you need a reminder of how much you matter to this community, please message me and I will remind you why you hold value to this community. Because the thing that I realized is that us women we go through so much on a daily basis, you know, in addition to female health and managing that, to being present in meetings and also having to work kind of against the grain of a glass ceiling, which glass ceilings, I'm not sure if that's totally just an American coin term. So I'll kind of give a brief description of a glass ceiling is we get stopped at a certain space, whereas men can continue to elevate up. And so, you know, we have all of these barriers pushing us down. And, you know, I feel like it's crazy because within that, all of us have thrived in that space. We have found a way to persevere and push through that. And I feel like in that same moment of breath, we still question ourselves of if we matter. And I want to remind you that you do. You totally matter. You bring something different to this community that we obviously don't have. You bring a different viewpoint. And I just can't help but to say that. So again, if you ever need someone to remind you, do not hesitate to message me. So that's my LinkedIn, my Getter, and my email. And so I just wanted to say thank you all so much for allowing me to be vulnerable in this moment and to open up and to just share these thoughts. So yeah, and next we can hear from Juliette.
I have a comment, and it's just that everything that you just said and the way that you articulate this message, it's so great. And that message, your whole message is something that we should always keep in mind when we are doing everything we're doing in the community. My cat just wants me to shut up, so but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Marrelle. It's so nice to feel like we're part of a community. So, and yeah, thanks for having me in this community. So I guess, okay, let me do this. And to share sound and video and this. All right, you should all see this, right? Yeah, cool. Yeah. So the cat answered for you. Yeah, so it's great to be here. I'm Juliette and I work at the BBC, so I just kind of wanted to take you through some of what we've been doing with Solid. So just a bit of an introduction first. I'm Juliette Carter, as I said. I'm the tech lead for the team in BBC R&D looking at building new trusted data services and capabilities, and specifically focusing on developing services using Solid. And a bit about me, I'm half French, half English, and I'm based in Manchester. So in this presentation, I wanted to give you an overview of what our team's been up to in the last year or so in the space, and more specifically give you an idea of why the BBC is looking at that space, why we're looking at personal data and why Solid. Show you a trial application we've built called MyPDS, which is an application to manage your data on your pod, gain insights into your personal data, and kind of manage access of that data from various services. And then we did a bit of user research, audience trials on our application, and so we wanted to, I wanted to share a bit what people said on that, because it might be helpful just for the Solid community to kind of hear what people had to say. So first of all, why is the BBC doing this work? Well, so picking up from Solid World, so in September last year, two of my colleagues, Hannes Wycliffe and Max Leonard, who I'm sure a lot of you will know by now as he's now left the BBC to work at Inrupt. So I'm now replacing Max at the BBC. So they presented at Solid World in September last year and kind of gave an overview why the BBC is involved in that space and what sort of personal data we collect. So that presentation is probably a good preliminary to kind of why the BBC is involved with Solid. So you can probably check that out in your own time. But to summarise, as a public service company, we have to promote technical innovation and maintain a leading role in research and development. So we've got a responsibility to our audiences to help define a safe and trustworthy world online. So we're actively participating in shaping what the new data ecosystem will look like, to put control back into the hands of the users. And yeah, we believe that Solid will play a part in that data ecosystem. So we've been designing and implementing services and prototypes using Solid to investigate what that new data ecosystem might look like and what it could mean for the BBC as well. So more specifically, what we've been working on are building technical prototypes, such as the web app I'll show you in just a moment, which allows users to integrate BBC, Spotify and Netflix data to create the media profile. And then that data can be used to enhance other services. For example, if you could use your media data from all of these services to curate data from BBC Sounds, which is our radio and podcast app. We've also done some UX prototypes, which shows additional profile on top of the media profile, and yeah, different dashboards for the web app. So thoughts about how that could all work. And we've developed ideas of services which would integrate with MyPDS, our technical prototype. And then we've also done a bit of work on education around data, such as explainer videos on what is personal data and what are personal data stores. So yeah, without further ado, I'll talk a little bit about the actual trial application that we've developed. So this is an application we designed that allows you to import personal data onto your pod from a variety of different sources and view it all in one place. So we'll play this video, which should explain that to you in more detail. Hopefully you'll hear sound as well. Or not.
MyPDS allows you to see all of your data all in one place. Your data is organised into simple profiles. That might include the things you've watched and listened to, an overview of where you're spending and saving your money, and critical data about your health and well-being. MyPDS brings this data together by connecting your apps and services. Once you can see your data, you can make sure it really does reflect you, so you'll get more tailored and personalised experiences. MyPDS can also help you use your data in new ways. It gives you access to new types of services that can help with self-improvement, contribute to the common good, or just allow you to use your data to have more fun. You decide who sees your data. You can change who has access to it at any point, keeping it safe and secure at all times. Be part of a change where you and not businesses control your data. MyPDS. See, explore and use your data.
There you go. So as you can see, it's quite an extensive idea and there's kind of lots of different ideas, and this is more of a kind of UX design of what MyPDS could look like. So we decided to build a slice of MyPDS and actually implement that. So specifically focusing on the media data, of course, as we're a broadcasting company, and kind of thinking about how we could use that data. So I've got another video to show you, which is essentially a screen share of me doing the demo last night, because I chickened out and I didn't want to do it live. So I'll talk you through it as we go. So essentially it just kind of starts off, and it's as if you could get it from the App Store, so you can go and download it. There's a little video that could explain what MyPDS, what a PDS is, what Solid is, and you can carry on. Here you can choose your pod provider. So for example, you could log in with the BBC and with your BBC account, but for the demo I've just chosen to log in with Interrupt. So you'll do the little Interrupt Solid dance, and then you can start by connecting your account. So I can choose to import data from the BBC and Spotify, and then so I'll connect my BBC data. It'll say, we'll pull in your 200 last episodes from iPlayer. I could connect Spotify. It'll pull in my 50 top artists, 50 last songs or something like that. and okay. And then when I finish connecting my data, it'll essentially kind of pull all that from these sources, change it into linked data format, put that on my pod, and now I've got kind of a media profile set up that's powered by my data from both the BBC and Spotify. So on my media profile, I can see what's powering my account, BBC and Spotify. I can kind of have a look at the data that's on there. So here are my the Spotify artists that I've pulled into my actual Spotify account. I could see the podcasts as well, which this time that's pulled in from BBC. And then, you can see a little timeline here of actually what I've seen and what I've listened to based on both sources. So for example, the Olympics, that's on iPlayer, and Spotify from other songs that I've listened to. Other things you can do, so this bit will kind of say, here's an app that's compatible with data stored on your pods, like BBC Sounds. At the moment, the actual BBC Sounds isn't compatible, but this is an example. So you could kind of click on it, authorize BBC Sounds to access your media profile, and go to BBC Sounds. And basically what this will do is, now that because you've imported Spotify data into your pods and to power your media profile, and Sounds has access to your media profile, we can suddenly kind of recommend people new content, BBC content, based on data that we didn't have before, because this is based on your Spotify data. So for example, I had listened to some Queen probably, or hear some Sam Smith, and now it's kind of recommended me a podcast on Freddie Mercury because, well, I listened to Queen on Spotify, and this is a BBC Sounds podcast. And here at the bottom, you'll see that this is actually my postcode. It knows I live in Manchester. It knows that I've listened to Whitney on my Spotify account. So it's saying, yeah, there's a Whitney concert in Salford, which is just down the road from me. So based on my personal data, I kind of like do some more personalized recommendations. The other thing you can do is, if you go back to my PDFs, you can kind of tailor the artist so that your recommendations really do reflect who you are. So for example, actually, if my partner listens to Mike Oldfield and Sam Smith, but that's not me, I can exclude that, so I get personalized recommendation to me. And you could kind of imagine, if you've got children, you've got nursery rhymes in the Spotify account, you can kind of just get rid of that. There are other profiles, so we've not implemented these profiles, we've only implemented the media profile, but these are kind of UX design that kind of show you what else you could do with my PDFs and other profiles. So for example, the core profile, you can link it with gov.uk. Actually, that bit is real, so it's got me and my postcode. You could kind of have an idea of local elections that happen around you, things that kind of value your interests. The finance profile, you could connect your bank accounts to that. It could show you what your accounts are. It could show you how much you've got in each account. It could show you what your spendings are. It could also show you where you're spending things and when you're spending things. And then it could suggest some other applications that might use data stored in your finance profile. And that's, you could use with that. So you've also got a health profile, and you could pull in, for example, your Fitbit data, and it says how much exercise you've done. You could put in your NHS history and have a all in one place with kind of patient records, see your latest runs. Again, suggest some applications that use health profile data to give you more insights. And then, social profile, you could connect your social accounts. It could show you who your friends are across accounts. It could show you how many posts you've done across all of your kind of social media platforms. And again, suggest some applications that might use social profile data. So beyond the profiles, there's also a bit of a dashboard, and I think, just the settings. So you could, for example, delete the data. The caveat here is it deletes the data, obviously delete the data that's in your pod, which is different than delete the data that's actually put back from the third-party sources. So it's not because I say delete the data from my pod that then my Spotify data will actually be deleted, because we're not quite there in the ecosystem where obviously organizations still, store things centrally rather than on their pod, obviously. So, there's a bit of a detachment here as to kind of what we can do with with that, but yeah. And then some dashboard around kind of getting some more insights. You could look at different applications that interact with that. That's actually the accounts that power my that I've actually got connected there. And yeah, that's kind of a whistle-stop tour of my PDS. So yeah, there's kind of the two main things behind that. There's the fact that you can import data from multiple sources. For example, here I've demonstrated BBC, Spotify, or Netflix, and you can kind of see your viewing history all in one place. It's kind of like a way of just seeing all your data in place. And yeah, the second thing is obviously, as I said, we were able to suggest BBC content based on Spotify artists. So that kind of just shows you how when you kind of pull it and you store it on your pod in an interoperable way, you can kind of use it across and kind of enhance applications and offer more value to the user than we've been able to do so far. So yes, next slide. Yes, we've seen the video. Okay, so yeah, we've done some audience research. We wanted to see what our audiences thought of the proposition. So this team did some extensive audience research, and we worked with a youth site who are experts in conducting research with young people. So yeah, we did a national survey to explore and gauge public attitude and appetite for PDS, as well as a 2-week online community with a diverse sample of 25 to 35-year-olds, so what we'd call young audiences. So as I said, we did it through youth sites, and the young people were presented the app, the concepts. They were able to play with it and give feedback on what they thought of a PDS and what they thought of our app. So yeah, essentially our research objectives were determine views on using a PDS as an alternative way to manage data, gather feedback on the PDS prototype, gather feedback on kind of the broader design behind it, and have some conversations around that, determine the appeal of a range of PDS service propositions, and then finally understand perceptions of the BBC's role in relation to kind of this area. So over the course of the 2 weeks, obviously there was a lot of conversation around data. What we found is that young people have a lot to say about their data, even if opinions do vary. So sharing data in return for services is expected and normalised, but young people do have concerns. They don't necessarily agree with data collection practices, which give you little choice but to accept or share your data to have access to these services. But there were also concerns around not being in control and finding it difficult to keep track of who has what data, and which can be overwhelming. So there is an appetite for being more in control, with the caveat of not having the responsibility of personally managing risk with data. So they want strong oversight and strong regulations as a baseline. And young people also recognise that there is a need for greater understanding about how data is collected, and that there is a gap in their understanding in that space for them to make informed decisions and take actions. So there's also a need to kind of educate them about their data, essentially. So the next thing was introducing them to the MyPDS app. Overall reactions were quite positive, and the app sparked a lot of interest. So they identified 2 key reasons to use a PDS, which is prevent unauthorized access or misuse of your data, and then gather, see and explore data about themselves that can inform lifestyle and everyday decision making. And they also saw the benefits of using MyPDS as everything being in one place, feeling more informed, having a greater control, having a greater sense of security, presenting a time saving, and getting new insights about themselves. So as you saw in the demo, we have MyPDS has a bunch of profiles, which are media, core, finance, health, and social. And the idea of storing data in profiles, having a central hub for personal data, appealed, and many felt it would help them keep on top of their digital life and help them with their understanding of their personal data and gain a sense of control. And participants valued the idea of exploring data, setting goals, and gaining actionable insights as well. And out of all the profiles, health and finance were deemed the most relatable to young audiences, with media and social comparably less interesting. So obviously, as a BBC and media company, primarily media company, that's not particularly the outcome we wanted, but that's really good feedback for us to kind of work towards as well. But many people felt that there were control and the control and permissions around kind of deleting data were still lacking in MyPDS. As I mentioned in the demo, obviously we're still at the stage where we have to import data from other sources rather than kind of being able to control them there and there. There are some concerns around having personal data stored and or managed by a single service as well. That's also worth keeping in mind. And the service proposition. So we also spent some time looking at what sort of applications or services can be kind of plugged into MyPDS, with MyPDS managing the data access to these services. So it was felt like an app like MyPDS could help improve levels of comfort when it comes to sharing data with other services. But there did feel like there was a level of overlap between some services and the PDS profiles in the MyPDS app. And they also felt that some of these services already exist out there, even though obviously the caveat is they don't use solids, but that's all behind the scenes. The services that focused on mental health, well-being and money resonated the most with young people, as they valued them as practical lifestyle guidance. But other services around causes such as climate change also resonated quite strongly with them. And in this ecosystem, the BBC alone wouldn't provide all these services, but organisations with known and relevant experiences in those areas would do that. But you could kind of imagine in some places partnerships between expert organisations and BBC as a trusted organisations could be considered, and that might kind of work to build the ecosystem. So yeah, to zoom out a little bit, what did young people think about the BBC's role in all this? Well, the BBC was deemed a good fit based on its role and its reputation, and the young people felt that it could play a strong role in raising awareness and educating people, and yeah, leading by example. So that's all promising for us. So in terms of key takeaways from the audience research, health and finance are the more relatable topics for younger audiences, so that's where the opportunities are. Controls over which applications has access to what data and being able to fine-tune that or revoke permissions is really important. But as I said, it's not yet present in the app that we showed them, so they picked up on that. And education around personal data and personal data stores is really, really important as well. I always think there's a real opportunity for us as a broadcaster to do something in that space. Obviously, one of our main goals is to educate people, and we've got journalists and we've got people who go and create documentaries. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to kind of actually do something there. And yeah, the BBC in terms of positioning is well positioned to act in this ecosystem, thanks to its reputation as a trusted organisation, and of course we're designed to act in the public interest, so we have a responsibility to. So last slide on what comes next. We've got on this work 2 conference papers which have been accepted at IBC, which is the International Broadcasting Conference. So my colleague Hannes will be presenting that next month actually. And so it'll be around our thoughts on the new data ecosystem using personal data stores and more specifically solids, and then details on our work on MyPDS. So yeah, we'll be sharing kind of all of that with the wider broadcasting industry as well. We're also doing a bit more work at the moment on the media profile. So as I mentioned, the feedback on the media profile was that it wasn't particularly relevant for users, or users felt that, services like Spotify, for example, you could already see what your artists were. So what more can we do with that? So we're kind of doing a bit more work on the media profile based on some feedback we've had from users. And yeah, we're also doing some development on another service, which at this stage I won't say anything about, first of all because I don't want to get into trouble, but also because we'll hopefully be presenting it at an upcoming Solid World sometime in the near future, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much for having me, and please send any questions my way. Okay.
Yay, that was amazing. For me, and I feel like everyone will agree, like the application was amazing. I think, to be honest, like you were saying, even though the data showed that you, sorry, there was like a bug and I hate bugs. I like blacked out for a moment. It's like, no. But I was gonna say that even though you found out that the data said that it was finance and health were like at the top, I still feel like the fact that y'all even put that in there, the fact that you even gathered this data and made it like you're so ahead of everyone else, because, and I won't lie, like finance is so important because a lot of us young adults, you know, in school, we're not educated on how to manage these things. And so the fact that you even created the space for them and like figured that out, like that is so considerate and so amazing. And it's so cool to see a woman being like one of the leads in this. Like, can we just like shout out to that? The fact that you're here, you're able to present this amazing piece, like kudos to you. But I see that Maria has a hand up. So if you wanted to say something.
I was muted. Thank you so much, Juliette. Indeed, I share everything that Marrelle said. I have the following questions. Number one, where do the data of this brilliant app, MyPDS, physically live? Where are they stored? Maybe I tell you the 4 questions, they are short, and then you take one. First, where they live, the storage issue.
Yeah.
Second, where on the solid pod, in which fields, actual fields, do you deposit whatever you import from these various areas, finance, health, my friends, my social networks, my heart issues. I saw a heart there, so I guess it's... so where on the pod do you deposit them? And now it escapes me. Yeah, the financial data.
Yeah.
Do you actually have via this MyPDS application an authorized link to the e-banking of the user to import how much money is left on their bank account? And the bank is then about an app actually harvesting that information. And the fourth I can't remember, so please answer.
Okay, maybe it'll come back to you. So yeah, where is the data stored physically? So that depends on who you choose as your pod provider. So as I showed you at the start, we had a couple of options. So we've actually installed ESS on BBC premises on our own servers, but we also give users the options to choose Inrupt as a pod provider. So depending on these situations, either the actual physical data lives on our service or they live with Inrupt. So the reason we did that is because the kind of ecosystem that we want to build, essentially there's the pod provider, the service provider, the identity provider, and all three can either be the same person or the same organization, or it can be 3 different organizations. And obviously in a decentralized world, you want users to be able to choose who does what. They want to choose who they want to host their pods with. They want to choose who they want to use as their identity provider. So we're kind of building towards a way of allowing people to choose where they post the data, etc., etc. So yeah, in the demo that I showed, because I chose Inrupt as the provider, that it will physically live on pod spaces. Otherwise, if I chose the BBC, it would live probably a few miles from me. Your second question, where on the pods is this data actually stored? So I guess it's just, we've put it in a container called profiles, and then each profile has another container for media, core, finance, etc. So we've kind of essentially decided where on the pod is going to be and kind of use that as a hard-coded path essentially. But you can imagine a future when obviously as the interop spec is being developed, etc., that we'll be able to have more to essentially. The problem is that we want our data to be discoverable by other applications as well. At the moment, because we've developed MyPDS, we've developed our example sounds app, we know exactly where that data is, but another application from another third party might not know where that data is, where the finance profile data is. So we need to be able to make that data discoverable. So, as the interop spec will kind of come to fruition, and there will be specified ways of dealing with data discoverability, then we'll be able to kind of fix that problem of not knowing where it is exactly on the pod, because at the moment that's kind of what you have to rely on. In terms of finance, so as I mentioned, the media profile is the only one we've actually implemented for real. The other ones are UX designs and ideas around what you could do. But it's interesting you mentioned finance, because we've got a grad working with us at the moment who's kind of spending a bit of time implementing some of the finance things for real. So there is an open banking API, which is a public API that actually several banks work with. And using that, you can request data in a kind of agreed format between all these banks. And yeah, they provide you an API that also does the kind of OIDC flow, and you can basically put in your details and actually get your data back, your finance records back. So it is possible. We're currently looking into implementing it. So yeah, that's coming. And I don't know if you've remembered your fourth question.
I did. I will be brief. I wanted to ask when it will be known to the greater public, sort of, so that the man of the street will be able to use MyPDS.
Yeah,
I understand it's under development, it's a prototype, etc. It's a strategically selected option, but it's not yet off-the-shelf service.
No, so yeah, good question. I think it depends kind of what our priorities are in the team as well. We are a small team, and we're kind of focusing on the kind of media aspects for now. So in terms of developing a media profile and kind of being able to use that across different providers as well, that's probably, I'd say, the more promising thing in terms of people actually being able to use that in the future. I think we'd have to partner up with companies who are experts in finance and health and potentially other areas for us to really be able to have the resources and the expertise to develop fully the kind of MyPDS as a whole product. So as far as I'm aware, it's not on the cards at the moment to kind of create that as an actual product and put it out there for people to use. But that's definitely, working in that direction.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for the questions. Do we have time for more questions? Okay.
Yeah, I think we have time for, we can do Kay, and then we can move on just to make sure we give enough time for Maria.
Yeah, mine's a quick one. I'm just wondering, are there controls limiting the amount of data that you port to MyPDS? Like, are people allowed to say like, hey, only port over like 2 years worth of my Spotify records or whatnot?
I mean, it will be fairly easy to implement that. I think, so at the moment, we've just kind of have it hard-coded. We're putting in the 50 latest songs and the 200 latest episodes. So that's kind of just for ease of use, for having something to show, that's what we've done. But yeah, these controls can be easily added and implemented in there. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Because I was just wondering about like the latency. If somebody all of a sudden starts a new account and then it's like 10 minutes later.
It's a massive issue actually, latency, because the more data there is to import, it can take a long time. So there's definitely areas of improvement technically in the implementation, and I think there's definitely areas of improvement on how the interaction with kind of putting and getting data from a pod happens, because it can not be the smoothest of experiences. So areas of thought, there's definitely improvements to be made there. Yeah.
Awesome. I think that is it for now. And then thank you so much, Juliette, for presenting and for showcasing your work. I think it's exciting because, oh my gosh, wow. Like when we're going to speak it into existence, when this gets out to the public, this is going to be so amazing and changing because it's so personalized. Like just 10 out of 10 would recommend to all my friends. Like amazing. So thank you.
Thanks for letting me present.
Yes. So next we'll have Maria. Yes, and round of applause. Next we'll have Maria come on and speak, and then afterward we can do Q&A, and then for Maria's presentation, and then after that we can chat.
Right. So I just wanted to verify one thing. Last time we had our meetup in March, or when it was, some months ago, Virginia and other participants did a brilliant tutorial about Solid for newcomers. Is there anybody today? I guess I have seen you all in the chats, and I have the impression that there is no Solid newcomer in our 7 people group tonight, right? Right. That means that for some of my slides, I will skip on very quickly because you know the foundations of Solid, the specs, the implementations, the servers, the definitions, etc. But I leave them inside because if you link them from the events page and other pages, maybe other people, if they go through, they might find them useful, okay? So I'll share screen now. You will tell me if you see anything. Do you see something that looks blue?
Yes.
Right. I try to be in a full screen as well. Is it bigger now?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So we are going to talk tonight about a proof of concept that we ran at CERN. We reported once on it at the December Solid World, but we were at an early phase. So now that has successfully completed, I wanted to share with you exactly what it consists of and how it went. How did the proof of concept start? So I created a Git channel that you are welcome to join. All the links are there in the different color, blue color on the slides. And last September 2020, a brilliant student from University of Copenhagen contacted me and said he's looking for a thesis subject. So I wrote a project description that you can read in detail from this link that I will explain because it is the project description of the proof of concept. So it is coming. And during all this period between October that we started until end of May that we finished, we got a lot of advice from all of the very active people in Solid. And also we were very lucky, Tim was very much behind the definition and support. And then this work resulted into a thesis that you can read in its entirety. It's not very big, 25 pages, I suppose, but it's really contentful and it has a lot of basic Solid information we all need to know. So I will not go through the part, what is Solid and the pod and the server, but I will tell you what the proof of concept consists of. We have an application that I will explain in the coming slides, which is called Indico. We added 2 additional modules. Basically, it's Jan Schiel in his programming skills that did this. We were only, I was his supervisor in terms of guidance and testing, but all the technical work was done by Jan. So we wanted to add comments in Indico events. Indico events can be meetings, can be lectures, can be conferences. Indico has a database where all the data are held, but Indico does not wish to keep the comments text in its database. Indico prefers that the comments live in the contributors pod, and he or she takes the responsibility for the comments they made. Also, when via this application, which is called Indico, you organize a conference. We have conferences that have 2,000 people. And when they have to register, and before COVID, when they could actually travel to the venue of the conference, in the registration data, sometimes there are personal data that can be even, according to the requirements of the venue, can even be ID numbers or credit card numbers for paying for the conference and stuff like this. This is also the kind of data that the Indico application owners do not wish to store them in their database. You understand, they prefer that these live in the user's pod for security reasons and GDPR reasons, respect of personal data. So the definitions on Solid I skip, the definition of Solid Pod, Solid Server I skip, the aim of Solid I skip. I come to the stages of the project. First, we wanted to understand very well what the specifications contain, because remember, in September 2020, the specifications were towards being finalized and being tested by the test suite. They were not cast in stone. As we heard last Thursday by Sarven at Solid World, those of you who could join, they are also being malaxed by the implementations and adapt themselves. So we needed to understand exactly what the specifications foresee and write them down. That was phase 1. Then we wanted to understand how many implementations exist, in particular, Solid Server implementations, in order for us to make a choice for the CERN community. CERN community being more than 30,000 people, not all of them in the laboratory, but all of them having a CERN login and password, so potentially customers for obtaining a Solid Pod. So we needed the evaluation of the implementations in order to pick an option that we can defend. And then we wanted to enrich the Indico application with the comments and the registration data, as I explained before. And finally come up with a recommendation for the future of the CERN-Solid collaboration, because the proof of concept was of paramount importance for the laboratory to be convinced of the maturity and the importance of the Solid project. So here I would like to tell you 2 more words about Indico. It is a CERN-developed open source application for organizing, as I said before, meetings, lectures, and conferences. All the material, like these slides that I am showing now, Virginia knows, and she will put it in the event, live on an Indico event. And they will live forever, we hope, in the Indico database. It is used every day. Today, for example, is a typical working day. For me, I created 3 Indico events, one for Solid World last week, one for this event tonight, one for the academic training meeting next week, of which I am responsible. So this is used very much. You can see the number of events. It's not an exaggeration. Other agencies, it's open source, it's free of charge. You can all take it. I have put the link to Indico in here. This is the link in getindico.io. You can get the software and install it and use it all you want. If you, Marrelle, want to use it for Solid events, it will be an honor. So please consider it. So very reliable, nobody ever feared losing any data, etc. So as I explained before, it is very important for things that don't have to be in Indico, that they are elsewhere. And the Solid pod of the one who takes responsibility for creating the content is the best option for the comments and for the registration data. So as I said, the understanding of the specifications and the existing implementations were done in the autumn until Christmas, sort of, and they are written down. And you can see all the slides of the presentation we gave about them to the CERN community, and also a detailed report that is, you can reach from this link. This is how, thanks to the proof of concept, the comments look. So the Indico event is like the one that Virginia will include in our meeting material from today. The Indico event has the title of the event and some description or contribution. At the end, a new zone was appended for comments, and all of these people that you see there with their names have introduced comments, which comments physically live in their pods. I have 3 accounts, the CERN e-learning, the CERN slides application, and Maria Dimou. So I created pods for these 3 accounts with these different logos in the pods, in their profiles, and entered the comments. Here is how you can look, for example, in my case, who is hosted in solidcommunity.net as a pod provider. If you are familiar with this user interface of the Solid community pod, you remember that you have various prefixed places to which a Solid comment was added, and every Solid comment has a timestamp, 2021, 6th of April, and a hash number to differentiate it from other events at the same time, and the time is also there. And you can actually visit this text by clicking on it, and you can see exactly what comment you have added. And you also have the ACLs, the access control list, with which you enable Indico to fetch and display your comment from your pod. So that was also a way of testing the ACL usage. So it was written on JavaScript. It was client side, because Indico has hundreds of thousands of lines of code. It would be much more complicated to integrate it in the main Indico tree of code. It can be reused by other applications, as you can imagine, because it is totally tailored to existing syntax of the Solid pod in the NSS implementation so far. It has 1 file per comment. You saw in the previous screen probably that I told you that you have 1 file that represents 1 comment with its date and timestamp, communicates with the data pod directly thanks to the ACLs. It does need the Indico session authentication, namely, in order for me to enter a comment, I need to go into the Indico event and log in. Indico accepts logins which can be CERN logins or Google logins, or I don't remember, GitHub logins. It has a variety of logins it accepts. But in order to avoid malicious actions, we wanted somehow the person to authenticate against Indico and then place a comment. And Indico holds the reference to the location of the comment, while the comment, as we said 50 times already, lives on the pod. Now the second module, which is the Indico conference registration data. So in order to register, this is how Indico looks. In order to register for a conference, you have to usually put your name, email address, blah, blah. But with this extension, you can press on the autocomplete button and fetch the data from your pod profile. So you don't have to type anything. It just, all of this comes from what lives in Jan's pod. After several people like me with my 3 accounts and Jan have registered to the conference, you can see from within Indico these required fields for registration to the conference, which are all fields that are taken from the pod. The registration is completed, but nobody typed anything in Indico. It just was imported from the pods. Here you have some assumptions that Jan used for mapping required fields in Indico, like name, surname, email, etc., to existing information on the pod by using the defined standards in W3C. Here is some details, like with a comment. So you retrieve information for the Indico conference from the data pod, as we said. At the beginning, we wanted to take the personal information of the conference and save it in the pod, but we voted against this idea. We preferred the pod to be the master, let's say, the primary leader of submitting information, because there was some sensitive information like payment details, etc., that we wanted to be sure that the data retrieval would be reliable. And we did not know exactly how to manage the ACLs when they come from another application and not from Solid itself. Also because Indico would not be willing to totally get rid of all the information it already holds about conferences, because for the archival of events and retrieval of the events later on, they have to live with Indico in terms of conference materials and participants. And also because the conferences being very heavy events with hundreds of contributions, parallel sessions, and thousands of participants, in the amount of time we had until the end of the master's development work, we didn't know how to manage performance issues. So that was the decisions we had to make. So when we presented to the CERN management the successful end of the proof of concept, we faced some challenges, which particularly have to do with the status of the UI, because we recommended the usage of solidcommunity.net because it's open source, and because storage issues we don't have concerning the CERN data protection office, because the data are stored in European soil. But the UI for the 4 only users that accepted to play the game and get their own pods, in addition to us, we received a sort of the feedback, give us something more modern and more 21st century, and then we discuss again. So we reported that the community is growing, that there is a great enthusiasm, that it is a living standard, and therefore it is normal that the applications are not in a final, enterprise and operational kind of level. And so after we listed lucidly the challenges we had, I defended passionately that the strategic decision for CERN as a laboratory, despite the challenges, because government agencies, like, for example, what Juliette reported today about the BBC, or other things we heard at Solid World, like the NHS, the Flanders administration agreements, etc., embrace Solid, that there are many startups that are thrilled and come at every Solid World, and they say how they integrate with their applications the Solid pods, that it is strategically and ideologically important for CERN to be engaged with Solid. So this is my cheval de bataille, we say in French. It means this is my current fight to actually convince. So conclusions, I defend, because now Jan finished his thesis, he works for a company, he's out of this, and I am the only one who sort of fights in favor of this. We suggest that now that CSS is out, as announced last Thursday, that we do install CSS, we do integrate it with a single sign-on of CERN, which is security top class. We do get some student help to develop an attractive UI, which will be very useful for the whole Solid community, not only the CERN users. Or we use the CERN Dropbox. I have put the link there for you to understand. CERN has an in-house developed Dropbox, which holds all of our files and is a portal to all kinds of applications. Maybe this is an alternative. I let the CERN management to decide on this. I wrote a policy document in favor of one of these options, and then the benefit would be, the use case would be to give every CERN user a user profile, because some apps have, for example, Indigo has a user profile anyway, but this user profile is just for me to decide which are my meeting categories that I want to find very quickly and easily. It doesn't have all what Juliette presented for other apps, or the entire personal universe of a user. And therefore, to give a CERN user profile has always been in the discussion, but we never had one, really, never. And this is a brilliant use case. So for now, I wrote a follow-on project along these lines, and I am lobbying in various universities, organizations, etc., for getting some technical help for the autumn to go on with the second phase of the CERN-Solid collaboration project. So you have here, thanks to all these brilliant people who helped a lot, And you have a lot of references here that I mentioned so far. And I have put some historical references that the young people will probably find interesting. From the time that just after Tim left CERN to go to MIT, when I was deputy of the web office and running all the operations, you can see the solutions adopted then, and some proposals throughout the years for keeping the CERN collaboration with the making of the web that didn't fly. But now with Solid, we have an opportunity, which I hope will survive. Thank you. Thank you very much for your patience. I cannot hear anybody. You are muted.
I realize, I don't know about y'all, but for some odd reason, my Zoom will disappear out of nowhere for like 10 seconds and then it pops back up. It happens to me at Solid Roll all the time. So when you see me awkwardly giggle during Solid Roll, that's because it literally disappeared for 10 seconds and came back. And it did its little lovely 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. First, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Maria, for the presentation. I think it's super exciting and I think it looks amazing, and hopefully we can one day implement that for using different events, because I think it's cool. And good job to you and Yan, because I know it took a lot of time and effort between the two of y'all to make this happen and come into fruition. And so now we can go into Q&A for Maria's presentation. So I see, Kay, you have your hand up.
Yes, so just a quick question, and I'll take a look at like the source code later on, but I'm just wondering, in terms of where you store, let's say like comments for Indigo in users pod, is that just like a hard-coded target location?
Yes,
Just
it depends, like Juliette said, it depends on the pod provider. In our case, as you saw, we had few users. We told them explicitly, guys, if you want us to be also familiar, take your pods on solidcommunity.net, because we had made a table for every pod. It exists on solidproject.org, get a pod. If you remember, it says, this is a table, who provides pods and where is the storage. I went through the CERN Office of Digital Privacy and Data Protection Office. It's a very strict, super severe body at CERN, legal wise, that absolutely forbids any storage of CERN user data on unknown cloud space. The storage has to be known and has to be, it can be cloud, but it has to be European cloud. And if you need to store on American servers, you have to justify why nobody else could do this for you in Europe. You understand? So definitely the answer is, like Juliette said, depends on your pod provider. For our proof of concept, the pod provider was always the same, and we knew where they were, and that's it.
Oh, I meant also like the container name. Like, is that always hard-coded? Like, I think it was like Indigo comments something something. Is that also hard-coded, or can does a user have control to specify where it is? I guess my question is related to discoverability, I suppose.
Yeah, in this particular case, for the needs of the proof of concept, what we needed to understand was whether a well-known application for the CERN community can interface to a solid pod. That's what we wanted to prove. And the time available was between January and middle May, with the testing included. Therefore, yes, it is hard-coded. And no, it doesn't have to be always adopted as a specification option forever. It was time requirements that made us simplify.
Oh, got it. Oh, and yeah, I mean, totally understandable, especially also for a POC. I was just curious as to at what stage you all left off. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. And then Juliette, I see you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of start off by echoing a couple of things you said on your last slides about kind of pushing for CERN to host pods and to be able to also be a pod provider. I think, you know, something I mentioned as I was saying in my presentation is we want to build an ecosystem where obviously the user has the choice of who wants to host the data, and you know, as CERN as a trusted entity, is, you know, an organization of that reputation, you can definitely see how users might want to be able to use CERN as a pod provider and service provider. So I would kind of, yeah, definitely encourage for pushing for that and kind of, yeah, try and build the ecosystem together. And I guess the other question I had was around, so one thing you mentioned was by being able to store your comments on your pod, it obviously opens the door to being able to reuse that data for other applications. I understand that at the moment it's probably only linked to your Indigo application, but do you have any ideas of what else you could do with that, with those comments, or any kind of data you can build on?
For the particular comments module for Indigo events, it was tailored to them because it is presumably content-wise, data content-wise, it is a comment on that event, you know. Mr. Joe Blogs gave lecture XYZ and it was incomprehensible, obscure, esoteric, rubbish, bad slides, good slides, do it again, never, whatever. So that was really very focused on commenting on the events. Nevertheless, I have a list of other applications, CERN applications, that can use the know-how from interfacing. And for example, the notifications project. The notifications project is when you have to announce that there is a failure of your service and your users have to be warned that there is a downtime and intervention is undergoing, or that you will do a power check in the computer center and those servers will be down, etc. So you can use it. The notifications project is very important because, as you can imagine, all of these things have to be broadcasted to the whole community. There can be one way from the service provider and from the database of hosts in the computer center towards a global panel, but there can be also other notifications, you know. And most importantly, I have the impression that if the user profiles fly, we have alumni network with 6,000 people or maybe much more. I don't know exactly the number. These are people who used to work for CERN, but they are not there anymore. And so they post a lot in the alumni network about brilliant projects they run now, activities. And they can be professional, they can be casual, they can be anything. We don't have, imagine if we had profiles to offer to active CERN users and the alumni, the wealth of know-how and information and educational data and ideas, debates, etc., that could be cultivated via contribution from pods. So I have ideas to contribute in terms of interfacing with existing applications. What I don't have yet as a firm commitment is the CERN IT management and CERN Research Directorate commitment that yes, we should go forward and some resources will be invested in proceeding with this. That's my problem. But that CERN is a lab where a private initiative, when Tim first presented the proposal for the web in '89, I was actually there. And our department leader told him, go back and do your main business, which is to write software for the Delphi experiment. And then he did this again and again. And on the third year, his direct supervisor said, and by the way, that proposal you had, he was calling the code Enquire. The web was not called. Why don't you go ahead and do it? So at CERN, you first take an initiative, and then if they don't tell you, buzz off, shut up, you continue. Top-down approvals don't exist. Sorry.
I was going to say, just get Tim on the phone to chat to your IT department and get them to commit.
Yeah, sorry, but that's the situation. I will not give up, so it's okay.
There we go. You have to have that mindset. And just one additional round of applause to you, Maria. Thank you so much for the questions asked. I'm going to stop recording now so that we can just create a dialogue and just have a safe space so that we all feel comfortable.